Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you are in the stream. It has been a record-setting tropical cyclone season for parts of India and a handful of countries in southern Africa. A trio of deadly storms made landfall within weeks of each other. This is Tropical Cyclone Ida about a month ago. Many scientists now are reminding us about the devastating impact of climate change on the developing world.
I'm Malika Bilal. Today we explore how extreme weather is potentially saddling people in poorer nations with the debt of climate change. What do you think? Leave your comments in the YouTube chat and we'll do our best to get them into the conversation.
I'm Shaista Aziz, journalist and Labour councillor, and you're in the stream.
Cyclones Ida and Kenneth swept through the Indian Ocean just 6 weeks apart, leaving devastation behind, and Mozambique the hardest hit. The storms destroyed homes and crops, killed hundreds, and left thousands without food and shelter. Cholera has also become widespread due to contaminated water sources and the lack of functioning health facilities.
Just over a week later, another cyclone slammed into the Indian state of Odisha. Cyclone Fani, the worst storm to hit in 20 years, killed nearly 50 people across the state and in neighboring Bangladesh, though early warning systems helped millions to evacuate. Developing nations bear the brunt of global warming, climate activists say, despite contributing the least to climate change. And the frequency of these disasters can complicate relief efforts.
With us to talk about this in New Delhi, India, Devendra Tak is the head of communication for the charity Save the Children. In Mozambique, Tendai Marima is a journalist who's been reporting on these storms. Marcia Kosa serves as the head of Programme Policy and Partnership for Action Aid Mozambique. And in Nairobi, Kenya, Abu Bakar Babiko is a meteorologist for the Intergovernmental Authority on Development's Climate Prediction and Application Centre, also known as ICPAC. Hello, everybody. It's good to have you here with us. Tendai, it is tropical cyclone season for Mozambique, for southern Africa. What is different this year from previous years?
I think what's different, particularly with this year, is that the last two cyclones that we've had, Cyclone Kenneth and Cyclone Idai, have been quite intense, and they've caused quite a lot of destruction as compared to previous cyclones that we've seen over the years. I think the most damaging storm that was seen in the most recent past is from about 2000, which was Cyclone Eileen. So, I think the intensity of the scale of the cyclones has really escalated over the years.
As we were doing the introduction, I pointed out Tropical Cyclone Ida. I'm going to try and get you to have a look at it in a moment, just over there. The reason I want you to look at it is so that you understand that a tropical cyclone, a typhoon and a hurricane are exactly the same things. They just have different names depending on where in the world they happen. Marcia, what was it like experiencing a tropical cyclone this year in Mozambique? Can you describe it?
Yes, I will try to describe according to what I hear from the people. It was scary because it was the first time that we have so heavy winds and rains as well. So people moved from one house to another while their roofs are getting down. So that was very scareful. And some mothers also talked to us that it was good that this happened during the evening because their children were sleeping. So it were easier for them to carry them from one house to another and then to another. Because if it was during the day, probably it would be difficult to control the children because they would be running away, screaming, etc. So it was very scary. And even the cars were moving due to that wind.
It is so powerful. I'm just thinking, I covered so many tropical cyclones and hurricanes, so you were running away, people were running away from the storm as it was literally ripping the roofs of the houses, trying to find some shelter. Malika.
Well, those roofs that were ripped off explain this tweet here. This is from the UN, the UN's humanitarian Twitter account, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And they tell a story of just one person We have 900 houses here. It's all gone. Our community needs shelter, water, and food. That's why I'm preparing these lists to make sure the government knows what we need here. And this is Saeed Fak. He's a community leader, and they write all around incredible person. You can see him preparing those lists right there. But Tendai, you were there. You were in several locations. You went to Pemba, you went to Beira. Talk to us about what it was like when the storm hit. What were people telling you?
From what people told me, they said at first, it was just raining continuously, and then, with that rain, then came the wind, and the wind is what blew off the roofs of a lot of houses. And this is particularly in Mozambique. And as the water level started to rise, people climbed up onto the roofs of their houses. I also spoke to church leaders who climbed on top of their churches, and people would walk into the church in Buzi district, and they would ask, please could we join you on the roof, because, we have nowhere else to go. So I think, the desperation that people have had in this time has been really bad.
Okay, so that was Mozambique earlier on this year. I want to go to India and talk about Cyclone Fani. Have a look here on my laptop. Devendra, who is with us, he posted this. No cyclone ever had such a long duration in April or May. It's being said of Cyclone Fani. Here's a view from the hotel where Save the Children is camped out. I want you to listen. Listen to this sound. Devendra, can you explain what we're seeing right here?
Well, I'm in a city which is the capital city of Odisha state, which was in the center of the cyclone, and the city is called Bhubaneswar, and it's about 45 kilometers away from the coast. So what you're seeing here is high wind speeds, about 170 kilometers per hour, but when the cyclone made landfall near Puri on the coast, the speed was in excess of 185 kilometers per hour.
Seeing the devastation there and what those wind speeds look like in that video, and then juxtapose it with this. We got see this tweet, it's circulating online. This is Ashdeep, who writes that happiness when you get electricity and water supply after a gap of 7 days. And they put a little GIF in there about how happy residents are. But behind that, Devendra, of course, there is preparedness, and there's a lot that goes into having power come back on. Talk to us about what made this storm different than other storms.
The good news is that, of course, 1 million people, or more than 1 million people, were evacuated to safe shelters before the cyclone made landfall. And this was, over a 20-year-old period where the government and civil society organizations and the communities have really understood the value of saving lives. So the intent was very clear that people will be moved to safe shelters. And that's what was done. And I think that really worked wonders in this particular cyclone.
Devendra, we're talking about over 1 million people that were made to leave. It wasn't, would you like to leave? This storm is coming. They were forcibly removed. How did that happen?
I think the community also must be believing in moving out, because the government also works in the communities, and so does Save the Children. I might tell you that even our children from our children's groups were very much part of the early warning campaign to go house to house and urge people to move to safety. So there's a great conviction now that people must save their lives first, and that has come through rigorous trainings, through rigorous workshops, and continuous understanding. So even children know the value of moving to safety.
Yeah.
And yes, people don't move easily, but the government here ensured that hotel rooms were locked and every person was asked to move out compulsorily.
I love that picture that you shared again on Twitter of those kids just going through the streets, telling everybody that they were the cyclone warning, telling people that they had to get ready. Malika.
Parveen says the government's response was proactive and effective. In recent years, disaster management in India has improved quite a lot. And India, being a tropical country, will always be vulnerable to such events, and additional burden will be high population density on coastal region. But Abu Bakr, I'll direct this one to you because I want to get your take on what you think India did right in this case.
Yeah, thank you. First, I would like to congratulate them. Actually, this is a specific state in India, which is among the poorest state in India, as I read, and it has a population of like a size of Spain. But they of course have a lower income, for example, compared with Spain. But they have really done a very great job, and over the past 20 years, they seem to have been preparing very well, and they tighten up their contingency planning. I think I could say that they have managed to implement Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction even before it is inception, because Sendai was signed in 2015. But they have been working, they have seemed that they have been working in tightening, in understanding the risk, and in strengthening the governance and management of disaster risk. And they seem also to understand the value of investing on resilience, because as Sendai framework reporting that $1 spent on building resilience, it can save you more than $7 in terms of recovery planning. So they have seen to provide a very good example that could be followed. So it is not always about money, but it's about the will, about the preparedness, about how you can use the resources that are available to you to do a good job.
Yeah, this is let me just share this with you here on my laptop. New York Times, how do you save 1 million people from a cyclone? Ask a poor state in India. That poor state is Odisha. We've just been talking about it. So now Odisha and parts of Mozambique are in exactly the same situation. They are in recovery. Marcia, I saw you smiling when Malika was talking about the electricity comes back on. That's so great. What is it that you have to wait for to come back on, and how your life then goes forward after the storm is long gone, as it is now?
Yeah, actually was a sensation of alleviation and happiness, because when the electricity came and also the communication, the cell phone networks, mobile networks came, it was good because people could at least inform their family about their situation. People could find their families and know how to help them. And even those who were in a difficult situation could at least inform that they need help and support. Of course, the same thing, the preparation in Mozambique were not the same as it was in India, and I think it's a good lesson also for us. For example, here in Mozambique, in Beira, they start doing this alert, I think 2 days before the cyclone came, but people were not aware of the level of the damage, so they didn't listen. So, and the government did that coercive evacuation for the people, because I think even the government people, they were not aware about the level of the impact. It was too strong. The wind went up to 220 kilometers. But when the cyclone Kenneth happened, so the lesson were really learned, and the government really evacuated the people, and that was helpful because they really avoid loss of lives.
Right. And Marcia, I think in the story that you're telling, in the absence of government officials knowing about what this impact was going to look like, in the absence of warning systems that we saw in India, we see people pulling together in ways that look like this. So this is an Instagram account of someone who sent us a video comment. He is a photojournalist and documentary photographer, and he writes, "There is nothing left to eat now. We feared that there could be carcasses of livestock or human bodies in the wells. We don't have anything left. It's all gone." And these are quotes from people that he's talked to. He sent us a video comment. He's a Zimbabwean who went to Mozambique, and this is what he told the stream.
Mozambicans are a resilient people. That's one thing that I've discovered in the covering of the cyclones, because from devastation they are rising, not because they have everything, but they will need support in terms of food especially, and anything that can help. Also building materials to put together what they can, as they have already started to move back to their homes, especially in the rural areas, because they have farming to do and fishing to do and many other things to get back to their normal lives after this big devastation.
So Tendai, did you see examples of this, of people having to help each other out, especially in the absence of being able to get back to their normal lives, as he says?
Yes, definitely. There was a lot of that. You would see neighbors helping people to rebuild their houses, like up in Makomia district, which is near Pemba, just after Cyclone Kenneth hit. Neighbors were helping each other to rebuild these temporary shelters that people could move into with their families. You know, there are also situations where some people didn't go to the emergency centers that were set up, but instead they went to relatives that stayed in other places that were on higher ground, you know. So I think the solidarity that we've seen between a lot of communities in Mozambique, and I've also witnessed it in Zimbabwe as well when Cyclone Idai hit, and one of the towns was cut off completely for more than a week. And, you know, people stood together, and with the little that they had, people were just trying to make it through. But in terms of recovery, I think, you know, the communities will definitely have to continue to stand together, but they still need a lot of support.
Talking about a lot of support, Devendra, let me just go to the Save the Children page, where there's a Cyclone Fani hits Odisha, an update. Let me scroll down here. You are asking for funds. What is the reality of, even with the best preparations, once a tropical cyclone has moved through, once the people then go back, what next? What's it like?
Well, as we have seen that the state governments of 3 coastal states of India passed the first test of evacuating people and saving lives. But for people who have to go back to their broken homes and to their shops and other businesses which are demolished or damaged, and fishermen who may go back to villages where there are no boats available. So, you know, people really will have to struggle for maybe even a lifetime to get back to where they were. And that's what we forget. And even the media probably goes away after the breaking news is over in a day or two. But the real work begins now. And I think the government and everybody has their job cut out in terms of ensuring that shelters provided very quickly, medicines and food are also provided, and also safe drinking water. And then we'll come down to livelihoods and ensuring that families bounce back and that they are able to get back to where they were and rebuild their lives.
Yes,
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because, you know, I think rebuilding lives and, you know, starting over again, it's a long process. Even though you may have been evacuated, you know, coming back to the loss and, you know, sort of trying to get over that, it's going to take a long time, particularly if you're somebody who doesn't have much money and perhaps you're unemployed, or you're a rural farmer, or you're a single mother with, you know, lots of children to look after. All of those things can be constraints, you know, even for new mothers that have given birth during this post-cyclone period that I've met here in Mozambique. They don't know where to start, you know, because even just having the simple basics like having clothes for a baby, or having, you know, a comfortable shelter in which to live with this new child, some people don't even have that. And it's going to take them time to be able to be in that position where they are once again comfortable with their lives.
Abu Bakr, I was just looking at one of the graphics that your organisation shared, and it's looking at this tropical cyclone season. Have a look here. And you don't even need to be a meteorologist to see how active it is, and the season's not over yet. Is there any doubt in your mind that all these tropical cyclones, the amount, the strength of them, directly connected to climate change?
No, I don't have doubt. The tropical cyclones are usually like they are weather phenomena. We don't directly connect the weather to general like climate, because the climate is a little bit long term. But in the past few years, we have been seeing some sort of a pattern in which tropical cyclones, they became more frequent, especially over the Indian Ocean, and they became more stronger. For example, in May last year, in 2018, tropical cyclone Sagar developed over the northern part of the Indian Ocean and made landfall over Somalia as the strongest in the record. In the same year, in October, 2 tropical cyclones developed also over the Indian Ocean and made landfall over European Peninsula and India, and that was also a rare case. The Indian Meteorological Department described it as the rarest of the rare. And in the southern part of the Indian Ocean, we also have been seeing very strong tropical cyclone that hit Mozambique in just a span of 6 weeks, as you said. And tropical cyclone Idai didn't impact only Mozambique, which is a coastal country, but the impact went inland into Malawi and Zimbabwe, and that was also rare and extreme. So the tropical cyclones are actually very tied to the temperature of the ocean surface. That is why they develop over the tropical ocean, because that is where you have the warm water that provide the environment that helps the development of tropical cyclones. And in the observations in the past years, we have seen, these are actually documented and published research, that the Indian Ocean has been warming rapidly for the past 100 years, and it has been the most rapid warming ocean part of the tropical ocean. So if you link those together, and it is directly like the warming of the ocean is directly related to the anthropogenic impact. So if you link all these series of reasoning, you would have no doubt to link tropical.
Can I mention here? Can I just mention that like the Bay of Bengal has particularly warm waters and is very conducive to cyclones. So as you know, the temperature of the seas rise with climate change. I've read somewhere that there's going to be probably 20% increase in what we call natural disasters by the end of the century. And apart from the increase, like the cyclone Phony was a summer cyclone. It's the third cyclone in the summer to have arrived in the last 150 years. So we could see more of the cyclones also, rising up in irregular periods. But also, can I mention that with rising sea levels, the storm surge could be a real threat. So that's one more thing to look out for, because if water comes in and inundates areas, that can lead to many more catastrophes, which luckily Cyclone Phony, we didn't see much of inundation of water. And lastly, I want to also point out here that with increased migration, rapid urbanization, there are more complications now to ensuring that people stay safe, and particularly when the cyclone or a flood or an earthquake, has occurred. How do we get people to, be healthy and to be safe and to get back to their lives? So the challenges are really going to increase with climate change, and we as in Save the Children really believe that climate change is perhaps the biggest threat for the children of tomorrow.
And I think people would agree that you're right. I want to get this coming in from YouTube. Danielle says, this looks devastating. Best wishes from Florida, where we've also been devastated by many of these kinds of storms. But before we end, I want to give the last word from our community to someone who sent us a video comment, and she talks about who is culpable, and that is rich countries. Have a listen.
People may not realize that the UN framework on climate change actually has never agreed a finance mechanism to help countries to pick up the pieces after climate disasters like this. And that's largely because rich countries have been refusing to discuss the issue, and they're really blocking any agreement on the way forward. So it means that rich countries like Mozambique are saddled with huge extra costs for a problem that they have never caused. And in fact, Mozambique now needs to take on yet more loans from the IMF, when in fact they should be qualifying for debt relief, and they should in fact be receiving grants from the rich polluting countries that have actually caused the climate crisis.
Advice from a climate policy analyst.
And the start of a whole new debate that we will pick up another day on the stream. Thank you to our guests, to Devendra, to Tandai, Marcia and Abu Bakr. You can keep a tab on aljazeera.com for the latest on the aftermath of the tropical cyclones in the Southern Hemisphere. Malik and I will see you always online. Thanks for watching. Take care.